We have this amazing show on this network that does all kinds of great service and all along those lines. And my good friend Irene is always doing some great work in terms of being an activist. I know she doesn't necessarily like that word. I consider her an activist and an advocate and all along those lines. So I'm going to bring her on the screen, and then she's going to get in these amazing guests that she's got. And they're going to have this conversation around what's going on in the timeshare business, in this whole notion of timeshare, solution or surrender, one of our more popular shows here on Pod TV and all along those lines. So how are you doing today? And I thought I'd turn it over to you and let you have this great show that you are always doing a great job of advocating. And I am a big fan of those that are advocates and activists. So I'm going to get on out of the way and let you get to your amazing guests and everything like that. But as always, it's great to see you.
Thank you, Mark. I really, really appreciate it. And today's show is remarkable. We are at episode 81 of Timeshare Solution or Surrender. I'm a co-founder of TARTA, Timeshare and Resort Developer Accountability. So this show today, I have been so looking forward to because of the nature of our guests today. So we have first Rodrigo, we call him Rod. And he is an attorney that has joined us today. So this is the first time we've had attorneys on the show before, but this is the first time we've kind of had an ask the attorney show. And Rod also, let me introduce the other guests so we can all learn a little bit about Rod. We have also a returning guest, John Cushman in God's Country, Bozeman, Montana. And John is with Resort Closings, timeshare specialist, and he maintains a wire fraud database of which a lot of that money is going and coming from Mexico. Then we have Lisa, who is a returning guest. But because just in the last week I've been introduced to Rod, it's relevant what has happened to Lisa to have both Rod and John on the phone today. We also have Iris. Thank you for forfeiting your lunch hour. I know you're at work, and so if you have to drop off early, just wave and we'll let you go. But we have one more guest on today. We have Aku. And Aku, is Xavier going to join us today?
Yes.
Oh,
no,
good.
no. Xavier cannot make it. He's at work at this time, but I'm here.
Okay, all right. And so Aku is the only non-Mexico buyer today. But because Iris and Aku sounded so similar when they explained, but I was on vacation, but we didn't, so we're just going to see what Rod has to say about some of these things. Now, let me start with Rod. Okay, so last week we had Mary on, and she had signed up with an exit company, and she was disputing a Wyndham purchase. Well, Wyndham, in 2018, I attended a trial when they sued an exit company and a law firm. They were awarded a $16 million judgment against that exit company. And they testified under oath that in 2018, they decided they were just going to ignore any exit company or lawyer associated with obviously associated with an exit company. So Rod is with Baja Firm, a law firm, and does a lot of litigation according to your website. You do other work, civil disputes that come up in Mexico for Mexico residents, or I guess U.S. residents as well. But and you have taken the California bar. So we're all praying for a good score on the California bar. And you had nothing. Were you even familiar with timeshare before you accepted a position with an exit company?
Well, good morning to everyone. Pleasure to meet everyone. At this company, the way that I went through it, they told me that they did cancellation of timeshares. So I'm like, oh, perfect, because I'm very familiar with litigation and the processes to show in court that a contract may be invalid based on duress, misrepresentation, fraud. And I was excited of joining this place. However, once I got there, I saw that all I was doing was reading a script, trying to get people afraid enough about the perpetuity clause and talking to them to try to get them to sign with this company for the service of a legal team supervised by an attorney to help them get out of it. Everything was okay. I was reading on it, but then I started looking around. As I have a very I like to investigate what's going on because when I sell something, I like to know the product that I'm selling to people to know that I'm not being part of something that might be shady. So after looking into the files and everything, I saw that this exit company had changed names several times in the past, that none of the real owners were listed on the website or on the LLC integration and the registry. So I was like, these are red flags for me. I start looking into the different client files, and I realized that in the last maybe 7 months, they've signed up about 2,500 cases. And out of those 2,500 new cases, it was just pretty much holding their hand and sending demand letters, one, and then telling them to just kind of sit, and that litigation was always a probability, but it's not true. They never go to litigation, and to just pretty much stop paying, to go through a non judicial foreclosure in the best case scenario. And they would also offer credit repair services in case that your credit score was hit, which usually it is, but that does not justify the kind of fees that I was seeing them charge for the amount of work being done. So I was very disappointed, and I ended up leaving this place because I was not feeling well with the practices that they were doing. And exactly at the time that I was working at this place, I was doing my MPRE, which is the ethics responsibility test that all lawyers have to take. And so everything that I was studying on, I was seeing that we were doing completely the opposite, and having an attorney supposedly be supervising the work. I was like, this can't be. An attorney would not allow this kind of conduct to be happening. Some people are being charged $4,000. Some other people are being charged up to $40,000 for the same service, if you can call it that, because I would not consider it a legal service. It was just sending a couple letters and hoping for them to go through foreclosure. And that's pretty much it, holding the client's hand through the process and charging exorbitant amount of money for something that they can self-advocate in most of the cases.
And what was really remarkable is we only connected maybe 5 or 6 days ago. And then just 2 or 3 days ago, Aku, we had the worst timeshare complaint of the year, hands down, and it was Wyndham. And this family, when she said the sales agent's name, I know his name as well as Jeffrey Epstein. He worked for Wyndham and then 10 years for Diamond, and now he's back at Wyndham. And when I won't go in, we don't have time to go into the details of what happened to her, but I said, well, at least you found us and you didn't lose money to an exit company. And she said, no, we paid this company $5,000. And it's the same company that Rodrigo worked for. And they threatened her and said if she filed any complaints or posted anything online, they were going to go ahead and charge her credit card the remaining balance of 5,000 something that she still owed. So this is just remarkable to have you on the show today. And before we go, we start with Lisa, because today is, I think, breaking a blockbuster show, because this is the first time, and Earl is here joining us. We're a 5 time zone day today. He's in Atlantic zone over in Nova Scotia, and has been so supportive of people that have fallen victim not only to timeshare sales but to the cartel. Earl lost 72,000 Canadian to the Sunset World, and 72,000 Canadian to the cartel. And Lisa bought from the same company. And we've had a few weeks ago 3 or 4 other guests that all bought from Sunset World. So there's plenty of complaints coming in about that company. So John, I hope people take the opportunity to go to your timeshare scam database and see the detail that is involved. And we've always get an update maybe once a year. So I think you were on the show maybe 8 or 9 months ago. Can you tell us if you've been adding more to it? What's the status? Is there any unusual things that have happened since we've last had you on the show?
Unusual. Thanks, Irene, for having me. And yes, I hope anyone and everyone can view the timeshare scam hotline.com database, where we catalog any timeshare scam that we have verified that it is not legitimate. So as far as new twists on the scam, nothing jumps out as far as new. I mean, there's always the iteration of we've got a buyer or renter for your timeshare. Where the money is being sent has changed slightly. So instead of always being to Mexico, now it's being the Caribbean and sometimes even Europe. So the scammers are broadening their reach as far as where the money is being wired to. Some good news since we last spoke, I think, is that there have been individuals associated with these scams who've been arrested trying to cross into the U.S. There was one not too long ago where the scammer walked across the border and they had her information and picked her up, arrested her for being involved in the scam. So we're constantly adding operations or fake business names to our list of scams. The more information I can receive from the scam victims or potential scam victims, the better. That way I can add as much information to our list so that Google does its thing. And when people search phone numbers or company names or potential attorneys or whatever the scammers may be using, my website pops up. That's the best way to get the information out there. Is the more information I can get from the victims, the better. So the scammers are not necessarily getting better, but they're constantly changing their tactics slightly, whether it be we have a buyer or a renter, or for someone who's already been scammed, they'll say, well, we found your information. They'll claim to be an employee or a government official saying, we found your information in this scam operation that we busted and closed down. We'd like to get your money back. There's currently a court case. Now you just have to pay taxes on that. So they're changing it up a bit, where they'll come back claiming to be employees of the Mexican government, or even U.S. government employees. So that's not much has changed other than, their names, I suppose. A new one pops up every day, it seems like. Yeah.
Well, and a good definition of analogy of racketeering is someone slashes your tires, and then a couple weeks later, different people from the same group come by offering protection for a fee.
Sure.
But the calls that I'm getting quite frequently are, number one, there's a hostile takeover of Hilton. And one, Mike Kennedy from Koala.
Yeah.
Where they said, we're A+, and there's commodity brokers that are, I forget what the scam was, but then he had mentioned that they work with Koala. And the name, when I asked him, I said, you didn't really say the name of the company. I called them and they said ORP. And I'm like, oh, ORP, that is a program. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's a Hyatt program. And they were calling a Hyatt member. So now that's not your day job. Your timeshare specialist, and you will also help transfer
Sure.
if someone needs to have a name removed from a deed. If someone, do you give us just a brief
Yeah.
description of what timeshare specialist does, and also how you got into the timeshare scam database because of your identity being stolen, your business identity.
Yes. Yep. So timeshare, we have two companies here. Resort Closings is the escrow company that does the legal transfer of ownership. So when a buyer and seller find each other and they need the legal paperwork to be done to transfer the ownership, that's what Resort Closings provides, that service. And then Timeshare Specialist is everything else timeshare related. So if you want to buy a timeshare, sell a timeshare, rent a timeshare, lease a timeshare, then Timeshare Specialist offers all those services. The timeshare scam hotline was created because someone was claiming to be us. They said they have, the scammers were claiming they work at a satellite office in Florida. And so I'd get a call saying, I sent the Walmart green dot check to your satellite office in Pinellas County, Florida. And I go, well, that's not us. So there was someone, multiple people probably, claiming to be us. And so I put a little blurb on our website saying, if you're contacted by someone claiming to be at our satellite office, please give us a call. We do not have any satellite offices. So I'd start getting phone calls from other people, other potential victims or victims of other scams in the timeshare world. So it was, started with, well, they asked for, $500 gift card just to start the process, claiming they had a buyer for $20,000. Now, when we first started the scam hotline, it was primarily based in the US. Yes, I sent the gift cards to this address. Yes, I sent it. No, I didn't wire anything. It was always done by gift cards. And then we'd start getting calls from victims who'd wired money to Mexico or, again, other offshore accounts. And so we started cataloging all of these known scams in the hope that it would stop them from, stop others from becoming victims, and cataloged as much as we can. I know that the proper authorities are looking at all of the information I've provided, because I get calls now that the FBI has recommended that the potential victim or victim call the scam hotline. The elder abuse hotline has been giving out our number for probably over a year now. But yeah, I always ask, where you found us, how you got our information. And about half of it now is being referred by either the elder abuse hotline or the FBI. So it's not just people finding us online. It is being, our information's out there. So again, the more information I can get from the victims or potential victims to catalog all the known scams, the more we hope we can help others avoid the same situation. And what I do want to bring up, you asked if there's anything new in the scam world, timeshare scam world. And now that I think about it, the calls I receive, I'm a timeshare owner, love the product. I know it's not for everyone, but the calls I get about wanting to rent out my RCI weeks or RCI getaway weeks or interval exchanges, or those are a new iteration I'm seeing. It ends with, well, you just have to pay the processing fee today on the phone. We're renting 5 weeks from you. Processing fee is $2.99 per week. You pay that over the phone today, and we'll send you a check for, whatever it is they're offering per week. I've spoke with those scammers, and my response always, because I'm sick of the phone calls, is it's against RCI's terms and conditions to rent out those weeks, or it's against intervals terms to rent out those weeks. But I have seen an uptick in those type of calls. They're not as severe as, or not as, we've got a buyer for $80,000 for your timeshare. But they're so prevalent. I probably get on average 3 a day. And that's either to my cell phone or my office phone. And so that what I'm gathering with that is they're getting lots and lots of people to sign up for these smaller scams versus the one, or the handful of large ones, taking $1,000 from hundreds of people a day versus $80,000 from a larger victim. So I just like for people to, the problem with those scams is cataloging it. They don't give out their name, right? When I get a call from those and they go, yeah, we're with RCI's extra week services. Okay, well, what's the name of your company? They can't give me a name, right? And every phone number they call from says it's coming from Montana, where I'm at, or South Dakota, because that's where my cell phone number is. So right, yeah. So that there's no way to track those numbers. There's no way to catalog them all because it's just spoofing the numbers. But it is something I've seen an uptick in. Again, not the same scams I typically deal with, but it is certainly a problem out there. Yeah. And that information, where they get your information is either a leak at the resort. They claim there's a national database of timeshare owners. No, there's not. Certainly not available to everyone. But they're getting that information from either a leak at the resort, or they could be scraping data, go and look at recorded deeds in the county records, and then tie that information up. So my recommendation for anyone getting a call out of the blue with a buyer or renter for your timeshare is hang up and say,
what our mothers taught us, don't talk to strangers.
Exactly. Yep. Or a little white lie of I no longer have my timeshare will save you lots and lots of headaches. Eventually your information will be dropped off that scammer's list, and then the next one will take over. But yeah, just letting them know you no longer have the timeshare. I've found that to work a bit better than just ignoring them.
Or we encourage people to interrogate them, as Earl does.
Yeah.
So before we start with Lisa, we had both Earl and Lisa, and we had a Canadian resident that purchased from Sunset World. They have a number of resorts. I remember Earl, Tres Rios, La Herencia, and so we don't have people send us their contracts because we're not lawyers to review, but Rod is a lawyer. And so I removed their names and I changed the amounts to even them out, so to look at privacy. But what Rod did was he took the Sunset World complaint and made a table of contract violations that he's going to talk about. And this is very impressive. John, I wanted you to see that. And then we also have, this was his description of, well, it's in Spanish, and my comprehension of Spanish is about 30% maybe, and Aku, English is your second language. Do you know what your proficiency would be for reading a contract?
Not that good. My first language is French. So yeah, I can read English, but no.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to ask Rod that. But Lisa, go ahead and tell us your remarkable experience with Sunset World. And I forget which, okay. I remember now. Rather than a specific resort, you were offered a specific product. So and thanks for being on the show again. And then we'll have Rod weigh in on the questions, and John with I'm sure is a connection with this resort directly to the cartel.
Okay, thank you. So we did purchase at while visiting the Hacienda Tres Rios resort outside of Cancun while visiting Mexico in 2021. And our original contract was with TB Travel, who later then represented as Sunset World. And while we were there, we were assured after several attempts of saying no, we were assured that it wasn't a timeshare, that it was an IMO, initial member offering, which was actually a fractional ownership, definitely not a timeshare. And when we talked about concerns about financing, we were also assured that if we were looking for a better rate, then we could just get a mortgage when we returned to the States. So this IMO would allow us, it was basically 25% of a home, basically a condo, a 4-unit, which was, we had a very low IMO number, like 33, which, so the lower the number, the higher the value, because those would be some of the first to be constructed and all of that. And because of Disney sales there, it would just be extremely valuable. So then we were, after all of that, and of course we returned to the States and they laughed. No mortgage. That's a timeshare. And so then we were, after several attempts to get out of it and try and get some of the things that they promised us as perks for making the purchase or doing the contract, were unsuccessful. Then probably about a year and a half in, we were approached by some realtors who indicated that they were in New York and
Appleberry,
and that they had a client, several actually, but at least one that because of our low IMO number was really interested in paying us $100,000 for the sale of the IMO. And so it wasn't very long before I just thought that it didn't make sense for various reasons and was pretty clear that they were tied to Sunset World or Hacienda Tres Rios. There was just no actual other way that they could have gotten our information and the information about our contract and all of that. So we cut ties with those conversations and then continued to fight with Sunset World or Hacienda Tres Rios. And eventually I was sending correspondence saying, if we don't get these things that you've promised us by X date, or if we don't get these things, then we're going to cease payment. No response. They would say they're going to call us back. They're escalating. Those calls never came. And so then we communicated that we were revoking authorization to debit our accounts. And so they didn't acknowledge that. Well, maybe they did. Maybe they did acknowledge that in writing, at least via email. And then we didn't hear anything for probably another year and a half. And then several months ago, they turned us over to collections with an agency in the US. And just out of the blue, about 3 weeks ago, they reached out to my husband and I via voicemail and said, something seems wrong with the card on file. We weren't able to take this month's payment just after a year and a half or almost 2 years of not making payments and revoking in writing. So
let me back up a minute. Did the IMO with 100,000 if they sold one condo or 200,000 if they sold a whole house, did your contract state you were buying interest in a condo because they said they were going to let you use weeks while it was being constructed?
Yes, it did.
Okay, so did your contract state weeks, or did it state you were buying a condo?
Well, I think it was both. I think it, as I recall, the last page of the contract, I think there was an addendum that specifically addressed the IMO and the IMO number and the 25% fractional ownership and all of that. Which, by the way, not any of those have started construction.
Oh, of course not. And you must have you canceled that contract, right?
No, they didn't allow us to
Oh, you
to
did not
cancel.
Okay, okay. And you sent your contract to Rod?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's kind of short notice. Rod, before I have you comment on that, as I said, Aku and Iris are a little bit in the same place, and Iris is really having a really hard time with this, right, Iris?
Yeah.
You've got some other expenses that have come up, and you've paid $4,000 for Palace Elite, purchased at the Moon Palace was that Cancun?
Yep. Cancun.
Okay. And so tell us what what the reason you're not happy with your purchase and the difference between what they told you and what was in the contract.
So what we bought was 60 weeks. We have 25 years to use it, which they did say if we couldn't use it in 25 years, we could request for more time. But when we got home, we realized that no, that's not what we bought. What was on the contract is what we on the contract is a 20%, not 6 weeks to use in a 20 period. And so that's not what we agreed on. And just kind of doing my own little research, there's something called bait and switch, and that is what they did. They told us we were going to get this, and then on the contract they put something completely different. We are not happy with that. It's not what we signed for, and we all of a sudden do have a few different expenses that have came up, and I've been contacting them. The contract is in Spanish, which my husband is he speaks Spanish fluently, and so do I, but not reading wise. I don't reading is not something I can do much in Spanish. But yeah, so I emailed them, asked them for the contract in English. Someone in member service did say that they were able to. When I emailed them, they emailed me probably 3 days later saying that no, we are not able to send you the contract in English. Already signed it Spanish, and we can't send it to you in English. So, and I called them again to see if I can talk to someone regarding my contract, regarding just understanding my contract, because that's not what we paid for, and I still have not heard anything. It's been a few days, and they
Well, and Aku, the reason I feel you're similar to Iris is it's the same thing, that of your purchase price was around 28,000, I think, or 18,000, and they charged. Yeah, you were not aware that they opened a credit card and charged $8,000,
Yes.
and this was Wyndham.
Yes.
Okay. And Lisa, let me go back to you for a second. Have you filed a complaint with Profeco, the Mexican Consumer Protection Agency?
I have not. I did do I think it's an IC3 at your recommendation through the FBI at the beginning of September.
Yeah, okay. And so Earl has been through a horror with all of this, but it was quite some time ago. I think now we're going on 3 years ago, right, Earl? Oh, he's muted. I think he's
There we
muted
go.
on his.
I found the right
Okay.
button in the right space.
Okay.
The last time we were at Mexico was 2018. As I said before, and I probably have sent you pictures, the shower area in the major suite, we had 3 rooms with the 2 rooms with the adjoining room in between, booked, and our room, the shower area, was covered in black mold spores. So we couldn't even use the washroom shower area in our room. So we haven't been back. We, following that, went to Perfecto, which is the agency, as you know, in Mexico, Consumer Protection. Irene, I just emailed you the worksheet from Chad from Tres Rios, as well as part of the information that we may have already sent you from Perfecto concerning the questions in the contract. But we fear, because now I've got, as you know, Raven, my service dog, and my wife has got a new dog that she's training to be her service dog, because we both have post-traumatic stress disorder, not from this, but from military service for me, and first responder for my wife, that we fear going back to
You're
Mexico.
retired from the Canadian Armed Military Police, right?
That's correct. I served almost 19 years. And so we're fearful in heading to Mexico that if we get to the resort, there will be somebody that will contest what we have won in a decision where Perfecto and the resort came out and finally said, here's your thing. You're not going to pay your every 5-year major block. At that time, it was $5,000 a year for remodeling and renovations. And we still have 21 weeks of what they call corporate weeks, which is what we were told to use. We were told that, we could register to sell our stuff through them. And then they said, no, you can't do that. You signed before this new format came into place. But we're fearful that we will get arrested if we go to Mexico, because I don't think anybody that's down there I can trust.
And it went all over the country about the couple that did get arrested because of their timeshare. But John, if you followed that, it turned out they were a bit guilty that they had paid $116,000 for a timeshare, and then turned around and rented it out for $250,000. But then they challenged the $116,000 Amex charge, and Amex refunded it. So a Michigan congressman flew to Mexico and negotiated a settlement of $116,000 that was paid to an orphanage. So that was a nightmare. In the United States, that would not happen because it's a civil dispute, not criminal. So Rod, now that you've heard everyone, as an attorney in general, not just Mexico, and because you've done other consumer advocacy law, is how we have Iris that did buy in Mexico, we had Aku that bought in the United States, but if their contract states that number one, 20% discount, let's start with Iris. Does she have much of a chance to challenge that with Pallet Elite?
It would be a matter of checking the contract a little bit more in detail just to see how it was presented. Where is the property that she was supposed to be able to use in Mexico as well?
So they have few different, in Mexico, I think Dominican Republic, they have a few resorts in Europe. They kind of have quite a few different resorts that are connected with Palace.
Okay, but you signed the contract in Mexico.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Moon Palace, yep, in Cancun.
Okay, it would be a matter of checking because there's a statute of limitations on different things. They were mentioning, sometimes they try to frame it as a membership that you bought for vacations. However, there is precedent from the Supreme Court in Mexico that details if the service is for use of a property, if you're paying money, if it's for a certain time, then it's a timeshare. You can say that it's whatever, a membership to come and look at the place, but it's a timeshare in itself. So did Iris just leave?
Hold on, she popped off and then here she is. I don't know. Sorry,
Okay.
we lost you for a minute. Okay, go ahead.
So there's precedent in Mexico that talks about what is considered a timeshare. The thing is that also there's 2 points in the time frame that we have to think about. Before we get to a lawsuit, you can go through Profeco based on different vices of the contract, so that is not valid. If you're not able to get a satisfactory answer from Profeco, then you can take them to court. Profeco is not going to analyze so much fraud or duress. Those kind of defenses are civil. So you have to be in front of a judge for them to be valid. What Profeco is going to do is try to see if the contract is aligned to what's different rules, like the Federal Rule for Commerce Acts that Mexico has, and also some other rules that are called NOMs, which are Mexico official norms, which is just laws that the Congress puts out to regulate certain industries that are very delicate. For example, the NOM 029 SE 2021 is the one that regulates timeshares. And so it's very specific on what a contract has to include for it to be valid, especially because, as you know, most of the papers that you signed are just addition. You cannot negotiate any of the terms really, except like how much you're going to pay if you accept. But everything else is just in a contract that you're going to sign and adhere to. These kind of contracts of addition, there is a registry for them at the federal level in Mexico that specific industries must register their contract before they're allowed to sign it with a client. If your contract was not registered and it's for a timeshare, then it's invalid. A contract that is invalid doesn't have a statute of limitations to fight it. That's something that with Lisa, I would like to talk to maybe when we're done with the show, that we might be able to do something if you still have money there to recuperate your money back, because a contract, if it's invalid, it does not produce any effects against you. And that's a big defense that we can use in Mexico.
What about the difference between Lisa and Iris? That Lisa has, I believe, one of the most open and shut cases, saying that she, an IMO and a quarter of a house, as opposed to Iris, that it's just strictly an oral representation, the sales agent said. And I'm assuming in Mexico it's the same as in the United States, where somewhere buried in your fine print it says you agree that you did not rely on any oral representation to make your purchase.
Oh, absolutely. That's something that allows a court to study if there was misrepresentation, because all the misrepresentations were probably done orally, and then they have you sign this contract to kind of wash their hands. And that's a bad practice. That's bad faith. And so that's something that a court would definitely be able to analyze and determine if it's valid or not. There's already been precedent in the US as well that determines that it's not valid. So there is something there that we could look into.
But what's to just prevent the sales agent from saying, I didn't say that?
Well, the thing is that it becomes a matter of showing through evidence, because remember, sometimes we say things and then we have to prove them. It's not so much what we can say, it's so much what we can prove. So that's where it comes to the point of trying to determine how everything happened. Like, were you pressured into it? Were they not allowing you to leave? What kind of representations they made? And like I said, there's already a lot of cases similar to this where they've shown that those oral misrepresentations are usually what convinces a person to sign a contract. And unfortunately, the gold periods of 5 to 10 days that they give you to cancel them sometimes is not enough to actually be able to fight it or cancel it in time, because it's such a long litany of documents, 30, 40 pages of documents, that sometimes we don't sign them as a society. We usually don't read. We don't take the time to read something because we're pressured into not reading it, or it's just not a custom that we have.
Can I ask a question, Irene?
Sure.
Of Rod? Is this why a lot of the times that when they do a workup sheet of what you're selling, what it's worth, that the customer that signs the contract never gets that workup sheet?
It's usually it's weird how they operate. Most of the time it's based on not giving enough information and making you feel like you have enough information to move forward. And they include all these post documents, addendums, and those addendums may change the whole contract before it. That's why it's an addendum, because it modifies the contract as it was signed. And a lot of people don't have the legal knowledge to understand the transcendence of signing a document post signing the contract, and that's what sometimes they take advantage of. It's very
Oh,
sophisticated the way that they're working.
Because the reason I asked that question, I know that in past, and being on with Irene in past, people have mentioned that they have not had their salesperson's workup sheet given to them. It's a very guarded document. They when you go to sign your contract, that's not in there. What I just sent to Irene 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, is one of my initial member offerings from a salesperson by the name of Chad from Sunset. You'll see it in there, what he's placed the value of resale on this, which could be, in my particular case, in my wife's particular case, maybe of interest to Rod as well, to say, listen, this is what they did. They've they've misrepresented to some degree under your law. I worked with Canadian law, which is a whole lot different than Mexico law. But please, if Irene, if that helps anybody, if you want to send that to Rod at some point in time, then please feel free.
And I have a question about collections too, Rod, that I edited a book and wrote the foreword for an author that was a Mexico timeshare expert. And he said, if you sign a contract in Mexico, it's not valid because the sales agents in timeshare don't work for the resort. But then an attorney said, if they have, that's why I always check to see if there is a BBB, because if they have no office in the United States, if they do have an office in the United States, then they can turn you over to collections as they did for Lisa.
Okay. So collections, it's one of those topics that there's really not much information out there, but this is how it usually works. When someone is trying to collect the money, you should always ask for two things. One, the document that initiates that debt. They have to show you where the debt was acquired. And secondly, it's the document that allows them to be the collections agency, in the sense that you owe Philip money, and then Philip passes on that debt to Charlie. They have to show you that document that allows Philip to transfer that ownership of that money to Charlie, for him to be able to harass you to a certain point to get that money paid. Also, one of the things is that collections, it cannot just happen because you owe money in Mexico that now they're going to come charge you over here. There has to be some kind of order from Mexico for them to be able to collect here in the US. So those kind of practices are usually not in bad faith as well. So it's something that always try to get the documents first of what allows you, what's the cause of action for you to collect that debt, and why was disabled, was the person that is now charging you the collections, what document they received to be owners of that debt now. Did that make sense?
Complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned going to court. In
Right.
now, do they do arbitration or do you actually file a publicly filed lawsuit in Mexico?
Usually arbitration in commercial contracts, they usually include it, because arbitration is one of those clauses that allows them to prevent, for example, class actions, where you have to go individually in front of the arbitrator. Those arbitration clauses are something that are being talked about all the time here in the US. In Mexico, arbitration and mediation and those things, it's something that it's that's what we could consider Profeco is. They're kind of an arbitrator mediator. There's something like right in between, because they can find, they're able to determine, and they're able to declare certain contracts invalid. So there's kind of like a mix of those both things in Mexico through Profeco.
Now, one of the concerns I have, like in the case of Aku and Iris, if there's not, if it's only his word against yours or her word against yours, there have been some adverse rulings. The worst was someone in California disputing a $5,000 purchase, and the arbitration award against them was $95,000. they were ordered to pay $79,000 of the resort's attorney's fees. We were able to get that reversed by working with an executive at the timeshare company, but then there was the law firm had another one just like that. So I hesitate for people to go to arbitration because of that risk. Now we have, I mentioned next week, Connor Spanny on, who apparently I did not know this. And John, this is good for you to know that different states have different rules and regulations about arbitration, even though they're using the American Arbitration Association or JAMS. And I think I heard him right. He's going to be on next Monday to clarify, Aku, and he does a lot of Wyndham work. But he said in Oregon that during the statute of limitations, 4 or 6 years, whatever it is, the oral representation doesn't apply. I guess it's based on the testimony of both people. Does that make any sense to you?
I recently I got in the industry selling campground memberships in South Dakota, where I grew up, and same sales presentation, slightly different product. And I was there a couple months ago speaking with a colleague who was also in the industry, and he was able to agree to what was said. Basically, the presentation was, if you ever don't want this thing, we'll just take it back. And so that's what we always said. If you're done using it, we'll just take it back. So the buyer of that ownership came back years later to the resort and said, I don't want this anymore. I just want to give it back like I was told on the presentation. They were told, no, we don't do that. So she reached out to her salesperson and he said, yeah, I'll have no problem saying that. So he was confirming the oral representation, and basically the resort agreed to take it back based on her or what she was told being confirmed by what the salesperson said. So yes, what you're saying, by both parties agreeing to it, yes, that's exactly what happened. So I'm glad you brought that up. He confirmed that's exactly what I said to her years ago, that we would take the ownership back if she ever wanted to just give it back. And so, yeah, you brought up something real recent. So I don't know each state's, but it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, certainly doesn't surprise me that each state has their own rules or laws for that type of thing.
When we had two Aku where people didn't realize what they bought, what they were paying, and one of them was just outright fraud. The same one that signed up with the exit company, Rod, that you worked for, where they could only afford $200 or $300 a month, and the sales agent, whose names I know so well, in cahoots with the manager, said, "Let me have your driver's license." And he took them, and he came back and he said, "You're approved for a 5% loan," which is ridiculous. Call us about a month after, beyond the rescission period. And when they called, said, well, with Trump in office, interest rates have gone up. So just go to NerdWallet, which is, so here they're in the same situation you are. Another one, just horrific, is they had like a trial package, same as this other family, where they were paying $200 or $300 a month, and that's all we can afford. And the manager actually came in and recalculated using biannual points to say, we can, here we can reduce it this way. But then told the resort's interest rates are really high, so let's charge the whole thing to a credit card. So they charge $17,000 to the credit card, and the minimum balance is $400. Now, I don't know about Mexico, but if you default on a timeshare loan, it's not pretty. Your credit score can drop up to 200 points. The only time I've heard of developers suing on the promissory note is if they were trying to punish the law firm because the law firm didn't charge any extra to defend them. But if you default on a credit card company in America, they will take you to court, issue a subpoena. And we've had people go through that process on their own, and usually they'll settle for half. even with there's complaints. So what hope, Rod, do you see any hope for Lisa compared to Iris? What would be the next step for our guest today? It's kind of Earl's from 2018. It's going to be it was quite a long time ago. I don't know if we can do anything for him, but what would be your suggestions?
Okay, with Lisa, I think we're still in time. If they still have, do they have money from you, Lisa, still? How much a balance they have with you, that they kept?
Yeah, I think we've given them somewhere around 30,000, and they say we owe another 10.
Okay, so I think that there might be something that we can do with yours, because we would try to nullify the contract based on it not being registered and several of the things that we mentioned earlier. So I see hope in yours. With the other one, with Iris, it would be a matter that just to revise her contract to see how they framed it into. But it sounds like the facts were misrepresented for her. A misrepresentation is when a fact is presented that the other person knows it's false. The person relies on it, they move forward, and they're harmed by it. So it would be a matter of just checking if there's something that we can do with your contract, Iris, because I haven't seen that the kind of situation that you're in, and it would take me a little bit more time to study it and be able to get back to you on that one. Sir, yeah.
I think I did. Irene had emailed both of us about adding my contract to the email. I think I have sent that contract to you. But I do have like just a quick question. Because it's been a month now since this contract has been signed. Should I follow through with Profeco?
Yeah, that's the first step. I mean, the first step is Profeco, because it can never hurt us. You're never going to come out worse from Profeco than you already are. And they usually will give us more tools to use in case that we actually have to go to court. So absolutely, always file with Profeco, and they're really in the best. They're looking for the best interest of customers, because they actually do try to do their work of defending customers from abusive practices. I've had really good experiences with them, and it's something that it won't bar you from doing anything else after that.
Well, and would you'll take a look at her contracts, because just like with the sunset, can you go over what you had sent this one was this was the table. Okay, and it's in Spanish, so many of our guests aren't going to review
Yeah,
this. It's too
I'm
small.
gonna go through it, and I'll just explain what each thing means. This one is relevant in general, to timeshare contracts, in a specific to the ones that I was able to read on for Sunset. What is it? Sunset World,
Sunset World.
or Promotora Sunset Resorts, whatever it's called. Those guys. So this study is based on that contract. Um, some of the things that happen with it is that when you sign a contract, remember, for someone to be able to sue you, they have to be able to pull you into court. You have to have minimal contacts, and those are based on constitutional terms like fair play and justice. In Mexico, is something that is very similar. For example, the contract, when it was signed in Mexico, the minimum contact is there because you signed it in Mexico, so it should be resolved in Mexico, right? And in this case, timeshares, it could be considered a real estate, which also brings the jurisdiction to Mexico, because a court where the property is at is the one that is competent to be able to pronounce themselves on the jurisdiction. So when in these kind of contracts, if you've noticed, Promotora is the actual owner of the resorts, and then they have another entity called TB something, and this middleman, right? The middleman is kind of trying to wash the hands of Promotora by, for example, in the contract that I analyzed, they were trying to send jurisdiction to Panama, which why would Panama have anything to do with the real estate in Mexico with a contract that you signed in Mexico? So starting from there, that contract, it's you can see that there is unconscionable clauses that will just make it absolutely impossible to seek justice. So that's one of the things that contract has. It tries to send it to Panama. Then the penalty clauses, they're completely one-sided. You would lose everything, and they would only, if they were at fault, they would only have to pay you for whatever services you were not able to receive. So you would lose all your money, and they would just have to pay you a certain nominal fee. So that's another clause that shows you that the contract is very one-sided. Also, on the contract, they tell you that you'll be able to use the sunset properties, and they say that you will be able to use a unit, but they always leave the unit empty. This is in an attempt, this is my take on it. They're trying to attempt to show that it's not a timeshare, that it's only a use of the different resorts that they have. But that's a timeshare. In essence, it's a timeshare. There's the financement of the contract. They're also very vague on how they present it. And we can argue that it can take a person into not understanding really how much they're gonna end up paying on the contract or the real value of the property that sometimes they bought. Most of the time, they tell you that these kind of properties they're gonna appraise and that you will be able to get your money back in the future or more. And that's something that is absolutely not true. And then on the promissory note, most of the times, for example, in the contract that I studied, they leave the jurisdiction open to be executed whatever they want. It says that it's up to them to decide where. So they could take this promissory note and execute it anywhere because the jurisdiction is not being held to one only country, which is illegal as well because it would be based in Mexico and you would have to go through the Mexican system because promissory notes usually have the same elements in the US and Mexico, but there's certain nuances that might be different, which would not be able to show that they make the promissory invalid in a US court because they wouldn't analyze it.
Let me stop you there, Rod, because we are out of time.
Oh, okay.
We're going to leave them hanging for a part 2 on this. We're definitely going to have you back. We're going to be following up with everybody on the show. John, thank you for being here today. And thank you, Mark, for being, he's probably still backstage watching us. But this has been invaluable for me to have a go-to for Mexican timeshares. And I know some lawyers I know don't really like to get involved either. So thank you, everyone. And we will see you, I hope, everyone in the future for a follow-through show.
Thank you, Irene.
Thank you, Irene.
Thank you,
All right.
Irene.
Okay,
Thank
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Nice meeting everyone.
Mhm.